Oh, thanks, everyone. I have two announcements. First, we didn't use EasyCater for this meeting, which is why the food never arrived. Also, and I just thought of this, effective immediately, everyone will be paid in wildly volatile cryptocurrency. You're all now billionaires. And now you're broke.
Bad ideas happen when there's no food for the meeting. So make sure it's on time and as ordered from more than 80,000 restaurants. Now, EasyCater.
You're rich again. And now you're not.
Order 24/7 on EasyCater.com.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's Paul Hamilton.
That's what they called me in college. It's the bone.
He has the facts to back up his opinions.
People ask me, well, how are the Sabres are they going to win tonight? I don't have a clue.
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
All right, let's waste no time getting to Paul Hamilton. He's going to be a very, very, very busy man over the next week. Covering the Sabres with the expansion draft, with today and tomorrow with the protection list, and also the NHL draft, which is coming up next Friday. And next week today, we'll be speaking about the draft for rounds 2 through 7. Paul Hamilton joining us on the Western Hotline. Good afternoon, Paul. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Are you taking any of the Open Championship action right now?
I have not seen one shot yet, but
okay.
Eventually I think I will. I get more into that as we get to Sunday, a little bit Saturday maybe.
Fair enough.
But I'm not much of a golf fan, so I never watch on major or any golf on Thursday or Friday.
Hey, I figured I'd ask because I don't know what kind of influence Brian Koziel has on you in terms of getting the chance to watch these. So,
well, I'm good entertainment for him. The odd time we go out and play golf. It's probably been 5-6 years since we played golf.
Okay,
he gets a lot of entertainment when I. When I play golf with him.
Well, if you're entertaining in golf with, you should maybe go out for a round with me. I'm the type of golfer where I'm already doing it wrong in the first place because I'm a left-hander. That's the fun phrase that likes to go around is if you're a lefty, you're doing it wrong right off the bat. So.
Yeah, I'm about Howard's speed, where I don't know who's the better golfer, me or Howard. It's touch and go.
Oh boy, yeah, and Howard usually is the one who's always getting the award of the lowest golfer at the WGR golf tournament.
Oh, I won that one year.
Ooh,
I proudly have that trophy displayed in my living room.
Oh goodness. Well, hopefully there are better things to come with your golf game, and same thing with the Sabres. Hopefully there are better things to come with the Sabres over the next week here. Lots of action going on, Paul, with what's to come today, tomorrow, and throughout the week. How busy do you expect things to get in terms of activity for the Sabres and general manager Kevin Adams? Do you think it's going to be a busy time, or do you think that I know it's so hard to forecast, but I mean something's got to give here, right?
Yeah, but we're not going to be real busy for a while. I mean, we'll find out the list tomorrow, but as of 3:00 today, you have the waiver and trade freeze. They can only, unless they make a trade with Seattle, that's the only team they can trade with. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come to an agreement on a deal with somebody. I mean, they can say, all right, we've agreed to trade Jack Eichel, and we have the parameters of the deal, and then it can't be announced until 1:00 on the 22nd. So the 22nd could be a very busy day as people start getting their trades ready for the next day when the first round of the draft starts.
Paul Hamilton joining us here on the Western Hotline on WGR. If you've got a question, comment, or thought for Paul Hamilton, feel free to chime in and let Paul know what you're feeling about the Sabres at 803-0550. If you still need the toll-free number, it's 1-888-550-2550. So, Paul, the transaction freeze takes place today at 3:00. After 3:00, nobody can be traded. Nobody can be put on unconditional waivers for buyout. And, we're then at that point, we wait till 5 with the expansion protected list that has to be submitted, and then we'll know tomorrow. But do you expect anything before 3:00 today, whether it be with the Sabres or league-wide?
It's been fairly quiet. Yesterday, Dreger was talking about Rasmus Ristolainen starting to ramp up a little bit. If you're going to trade Ristolainen and that's your plan, it would behoove them to do it before 3 o'clock, because then you don't have to worry about, are you protecting him? Are you protecting Will Borgen? Or, the decision's been made for you then, should he be traded before that. So that would be the only one. They really don't need Eichel or Reinhardt's spots for the forwards unless you really have a desire to protect Zemgus Girgensons. And I don't see why that's an overpriced contract,
right,
and a guy who missed the full season.
Yeah.
So you don't really need Eichel's spot or Reinhardt's spot, but you could use the defenseman's spot. So yeah, if we're going to see anything, that's the one I would expect is a Ristolainen before 3 o'clock, if that's what if they got something close.
Paul, you pointed it out pretty well in your article at WGR550.com. It should be a no-brainer in terms of the forwards, but with the defensive group, that's where the debate really gets to be heated up, and I'm on the same boat as you are. It really isn't that much of a debate when you think about it. It should be Will Borgen that's protected. You should leave Rasmus Ristolainen unprotected. And the only prevailing thought that I can think that people would not want to protect Ristolainen is you don't want to lose a guy that I really even thinking about what I was just trying to say. It's just kind of like, no, that doesn't really make sense. It just, to me, just really has no point as to why you would protect Ristolainen over Borgen, because I do believe, along with you, is that if you leave Borgen unprotected, he's obviously going to Seattle.
Oh, in my mind, there's no question. I mean, you never say never, but I think Bottrell's there as the assistant GM. He knows Will very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think there's no question Borgen would be. And the thing is, I understand that, and I've been saying this for a while now. It was just so obvious to me that the Sabres were overvaluing Ristolainen. They think he's worth more than most of the league does, by a lot. And the asking price is a lot, a young defenseman and a high draft pick. I don't mind that. I mean, why not ask high? I mean, you're not gonna your best offer isn't going to be the first time you talk on the phone with somebody. So I'm okay with that. I mean, that's all right, but I would hope, especially since Sam Ventura's here now, in the analytics department, that they wouldn't think that's what they're going to get for Ristolainen. I hope Kevin Adams is, and I think I do know Kevin Adams a little smarter than that, to know that that's not what he's going to get. Now, again, I'll repeat, never say never. Maybe I'll be shocked, and he will get that. So if he has it in his head that, well, this is what we're going to get for Ristolainen, well, then he has a reason for protecting him. Because if you're going to get a high pick and a good young defenseman, all right, if you know for sure that's what you're getting, then maybe I can go along with you. But unless you have a trade in the works, I don't know how you would know that. And I just, especially as I said with Ventura around now, I just don't see how he could actually think that.
Right. I'm in the same boat where it's so hard to even fathom the thought that, they're going to get what they think he's worth. At this point, if you got a deal like that in the past, why haven't you made a deal like that if you think that's what you would have gotten in the first place? So, I mean, to me, when you look at Borgen compared to Ristolainen's game, Borgen is almost just as good as Ristolainen, other than minus the fact that they're two totally different type of players. Borgen's more of a defensive player who is very responsible in his own end and eats up a lot of minutes, whereas Ristolainen can be that two-way guy that provides the offense, but super inconsistent in his own end.
Yeah, absolutely is. The two unaware. I just don't think – I think he's too stubborn. I think there's a way that Rasmus Ristolainen thinks the game should be played, and no coach is going to tell him different. And I think no matter who the coach is, that's the way he's going to play. And, he makes some dumb decisions out there. It's as simple as that. I mean, how many times do you see him in the right area but not covering the guy that scores the goal? Because he thought of it a split second after the puck went in the net. It's too late. So now now the puck's in the net. But then he'll tantalize you for a while. He'll go like 6-7 games and play really, really well and look great in his defensive zone and make very few mistakes and joins the rush. and does all the good things. And then you see, so okay, yeah, he's getting it. So he gives you that little bit, and then he falls back in his old ways. The only time that was different this year is I thought he and McCabe this year to start the year were good every game. And they Ristolainen really improved. McCabe was on top of his game. If I got Rasmus Ristolainen every game, I wouldn't be interested in trading him. I'd be interested in finding a new contract for him.
Mm-hmm.
But if they really think he's worth that, then they should be trying to re-sign him.
Yeah.
Why would you want to trade a defenseman that is worth what you're trying to tell everybody he is worth? He's not, but if you feel he's worth that, then why aren't you trying to sign him to a contract extension?
Exactly. Yeah, it's very puzzling that way. And I think a lot of people are, I don't know if they're bracing for it, but I think a lot of people would be at ease if come 3 o'clock today, Ristolainen gets dealt, and then it just opens up that spot for Borgen, and there's no debating it anymore. I think that would be the right move to make. But again, if Kevin Adams believes that that's his value with the player and the high pick, then and at least that's what Darren Dreger said yesterday. Then probably a move isn't going to be made before 3 o'clock, and they'd hope that they get that value. But then that just leaves the thought also for people that, okay, they're protecting Ristolainen because they still believe they can get that value, and then they're going to lose Borgen. So,
and what drives me crazy too is we don't want to lose him because he hits.
Right.
Yeah,
he drives me nuts.
He does hit, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Borgen will bring that to the table, but Borgen hasn't been, in that many games. So when Borgen's not there, Ristolainen brings something that nobody else on the defense brings. A little bit Colin Miller, but not a lot. Okay, but how many times do you see him, and I love hitting just as much as the next person does, but the rush is coming on, and Ristolainen from the right defense all of a sudden starts veering to the left, cuts in front of the guy, his own defensive partner, makes a hit, and takes himself totally out of position. And now you've got a 2-on-1 the other way because to make the big hit, he takes himself out of position, and he does that all the time. And that drives me out of my mind. And I think to myself, okay, and Rasmus Ristolainen, he does have that drive. He does work out hard. He does want to win. There's no question about that. I like his attitude. I like his makeup that way. But to me, just because he hits doesn't mean that he's a great defenseman for you and you need to keep him and take all his defensive flaws with it because he hits.
And a guy that can easily hit and be more responsible is Will Borgen. So there's another notch, another feather in the cap for Borgen in terms of trying to make the argument of protecting him over a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen. Paul Hamilton joining us here on the Wester Hotline here on WGR. Again, if you have a question or comment for Paul, you're more than welcome to join us at 803-0550, or you can use the toll-free number 1-888-550-2550. Paul, do you think there's any possibility that, maybe that since the Sabres would be, with this expansion draft, if they are giving up Will Borgen, but maybe as incentive they say, all right, well, if, maybe take Kyle Oposo as well, or, I don't know. I don't think there's any way they're taking Jeff Skinner, but hey, maybe if you're going to take Oposo, we will give you Jeff Skinner or some sort of not Jeff Skinner, Oposo and some sort of compensation. Do you still think there's a possibility of that at all?
Yeah, that's one way they could keep both Ristolainen and Borgen is, and I know they've looked into Oposo, is to lean them towards that way, but that's going to take, I think, more than the 6th round pick that Vegas took to leave Linus Ullmark alone. I think you're probably more in the 3rd or 4th round type of category. So do they feel that's worth it? I mean, you get rid of a contract that's only has 2 more years left. As far as cash itself, it's $4 million both years. As far as cap hit, it's $6 million that you would be able to get rid of. I've been hearing a lot of hand-wringing that, well, maybe you could get rid of Skinner if you're allowed to keep half the salary. Sabres aren't doing that. They're not keeping dead money. That's a thing of the past. It's over. It's done with. They're not doing it. They're not. They kept money in the 1-year deals of Hall and that type of thing, but that was just this year, and that's it. all right, but they're not going to keep money, especially in a Skinner situation, for 6 years.
Right.
And I don't know if they can anyway. As an expansion draft, I don't know if you can keep money. I think that would have to be a trade, if quite honestly. But all I keep hearing is, well, the Sabres can keep money on this and they can keep money on that. Just stop talking about it, because they're not going to. That's not what Terry Pegula is doing anymore. And don't forget, before Taylor Hall rolled around last year, the Sabres had a budget of $71 million, 71.5, I believe, for the salary cap. They weren't going to go over it. Then Taylor Hall thing came around, and Kruger was basically running the organization, and they pretty much were going to give Kruger anything he wanted. So it's like, all right, here's Taylor Hall. We'll do it. We have the cat. But let's not forget about that, folks. I don't think they're going to be spending the 81.5. Now, that's another one where you say never. You don't know what's going to roll around. But I think the idea is they're probably going to be around $71.5 million. I think that's what Adams is under. It's just like hiring a coach. He had a budget to hire a coach, and that budget I don't think included Bruce Boudreau and quite honestly, I don't even think if Boudreau would have gotten the job anyway. In this particular case, I think it was Granato unless Brindamore became available, and there was no indication that he was going to. So I don't think that's a big deal that they had a coaching budget, but they did. And I think people are forgetting that player budget last year, and I think they're back under that player budget, especially if you clear out, $10 million of Jack Eichel's cap, and you clear out 5.4 of Ristolainen's, and you clear out whatever you would have had to pay Reinhart. I mean, a qualifying offer is 5.2 if he were to accept that. You clear all that out of there. Well, don't be shocked if it's 71 million or around there.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Well, the one thing that I do want to point out with the with your article, the last thing I'll point out with the article at WGR 550 is the goaltending situation. The only contract that the Sabres have to really worry about at goaltender with the expansion draft is Dustin Tokarski. Allmark's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Hutton's going to be an unrestricted free agent. So what do the Sabres do there? I mean, they have that open goalie spot that they're going to have to use to protect someone. Do they protect Tokarski because he's the only one under contract, or do they protect a guy like Allmark to make sure that a team like Seattle is not negotiating with him, opening up that possibility that he agrees to a contract and signs with them leading up to the expansion draft?
Yeah, they can't protect Tokarski because they have to make a goaltender with experience available.
Yes.
So he has to be that goalie. They have nobody else. I mean, there's nobody else they can. So that would have to be Tokarski, and Allmark would have to be the other one then if you didn't want them negotiating with him type of a deal. So yeah, there's no choice in that one.
Yeah, and some, because I did an expansion draft on our website, and there was just and there were some people that were just saying, well, you should be doing your homework because there's just no way that teams are going to protect their unrestricted free agents that are going to be, heading to the free agent market as of the 28th. And it's just, no, you could protect those players. If you don't want them going to the market and allowing them to talk to Seattle during this time, you protect them. I mean, a guy like Alex Ovechkin, I mean, unless you're absolutely sure that they're not going to talk with anyone other than themselves, then you should be protecting them. But, in this instance, I mean, you have to protect Allmark.
Yeah, exactly. There isn't a choice. I mean, you've got the young goaltenders who, don't need to be protected. So, yeah, there is no choice.
All right, 803-0551, 888-552-550. Got a caller here. Mitch in Highland joining us here on WGR with a question for Paul. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about this debate that I've heard, not only from you guys here this morning, but on most of the other shows, too, about whether we're going to protect Borgen or Ristolainen. And why is it that Yoki Haru is automatically deemed to be protected? I don't see enough in his game to necessarily just assume we need to protect him over the other two. Why aren't we discussing Yoki Haru possibly being left unprotected?
Okay.
Because there's no way. Number one, he's a number one pick. Number two, he played under Don Granato much, much, much better. I mean, he was back to the way he was when he was acquired from the Blackhawks. So it wasn't just Dahlin playing better. Yoki Haru was much better too. So he brings a lot to the defense. He's a good puck mover. When he's on his game, he's good defensively. He plays angles very well. He's not afraid. I mean, he's not one of these guys that shies away if somebody's going to hit him and then loses the puck. That was Pilot's problem. Pilot was scared to death to get hit. And then teams found that out, so they'd send 2 forecheckers in on him and just go straight at him, and he would get real stiff and look when he saw that he was going to get hit, and he'd stand up straight and he'd lose the puck because he was going to get hit. Yoki Haryu's not like that. He's fine with that. So that's why I think Yoki Haryu played very well once Don Granato showed up.
Thank you for the call, Mitch. Paul, the other thing that you had on our website yesterday at WGR550.com is Don Granato speaking with Andrew Peters, Craig Gervais, and Marty Biron on the Instigators yesterday, and he brought up the point that he's trying to keep Matt Ellis and Dan Girardi as his assistant coaches on his coaching staff. How do you feel about that, and do you feel that's the right move for the Sabres and Granato going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. That's no surprise at all. I knew he thought a lot about them, and I think he's right. They were instrumental in what went on for the Sabres and how they improved, especially in Girardi's case with the defense. We just talked about Yoki Haryu and Dahlin. They could relate to Girardi. I mean, they both played against him, so they've seen him on the ice. He played right through 2019, so he gets that instant credibility of he wasn't retired 25 years ago when the game was different. He can relate to the game as it's played today. Now, yeah, Rasmus Dahlin doesn't play the game like Dan Girardi did, but still, he can relate to certain situations that Dahlin can get himself into, or that Yoki Haryu or Samuelsson or Borgen or any of the young guys can get themselves into. So he got a lot of respect that way, and I think he was also key in them improving their games. Matt Ellis, there was no question in my mind when Matt Ellis retired he was going to be a coach. I just thought, well, when's it going to happen? I mean, I've watched him run skates, during prospects camp. I mean, they'd have him out there, and he would do it. You know how the players used to arrive in town in August, and I'd be out there talking to some of them. It wasn't a Sabres practice. Somebody had to run it, and since Matt Ellis was over there with the programs over at Harbor Center, he would run practice for them, and it was just like an NHL practice. And they appreciated, he made it hard and did the drills that he did. Matt Ellis is very bright about the game. He was the type of guy that analyzed the game. He was the first guy to the arena, the last guy to leave, always in the gym, always an example. He had to be that way because he didn't have the talent to play any other way. That's how he was going to make the NHL, and that's how he made his mark in the NHL, is by doing all these things. And it's carried over into his coaching, too. So, yeah, no surprise at all that he would want them on the staff.
Last thing I'll ask you here, Paul, before we let you go on this wet and rainy Saturday, just with your thoughts overall on how the Sabres are going to approach the next few days after the expansion draft. So the expansion draft takes place on the 21st. The transaction freeze lifts on the 22nd at 1 o'clock. And then the next day on the 23rd is round 1 of the NHL draft. Do you believe that there's going to be any big move made in terms of maybe an Eichel trade, a Reinhart trade, so they can get those first-round picks this year to help build your prospect system a little bit more? Do you think the Sabres draft Owen Power number 1 overall like many people expect? How do you think things kind of play out? I know it's asking for predictions and you don't do predictions, but what's your gut instinct when you're looking at the next few days after the expansion draft?
I would be surprised if they didn't draft Power. I think that's the direction they're leaning in. I am a little bit surprised that Reinhart hasn't been dealt yet. That trade is so much different than the Eichel trade. So again, did you just not get the offers that you think you need to get to trade him? It wouldn't shock me at all that as soon as, I think there's no question, as soon as that trade freeze is lifted, I think you're going to hear deals announced, trades announced. I think teams are going to have trades ready to go. As I said, just because you can't make a trade doesn't mean you can't make a phone call. You can still call another GM and talk about a trade and get something ready. So when the trade freeze is lifted, then all you need to do is basically send it into the NHL and announce it. So, I think on the 22nd it'll be very busy around the NHL. I don't know, the Eichel thing. It's impossible to know, only because of the injury. What teams are thinking, how big of a chance are they willing to take? Do they think the injury is going to be fine? Do they agree with Jack as far as the surgery goes, or do they agree with the Sabres that they'd rather not have it done? But would Jack change his mind if he went to a team like Colorado, thinking I have a chance to win the Stanley Cup here? Why in the world would I just not agree to do it their way?
Right.
He's not going to do that with the Sabres because he doesn't want to be here. But if he's going to go to a team like Colorado or Vegas or somebody like that, he might say, you know what, I want to win the Cup. I want to be in the playoffs. Let's do it their way.
Right. Well, Paul, as always, your time is much appreciated on the show and also just throughout the time on WGR. And hope you enjoy the rest of your rainy weekend, and we'll talk again, I'm sure, on Monday.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Paul Hamilton joining us on the Western Hotline with the latest on the Sabres and what's going to happen. Again, the Sabres will have to have their protection list for the expansion draft in by 5 o'clock today. At some point tomorrow, we should know who they left unprotected, who they protected, as long as the rest of the NHL. And then the speculation can begin. Who does Seattle take? Who does Seattle not take? And we go from there. 803-0551, 888-552-550. Speaking of Seattle, we'll go out to Seattle coming up next year as we're going to reach out to Chris Daniels from King 5 News in Seattle to talk about the Kraken, their preparations for the expansion draft, and also their preparations for the 2021-22 season. That's coming up next year. As I'm Brayton Wilson, and I'm filling in for Nate Geary once again on Sports Talk Saturday on WGR.
How do you keep a workout fresh every day?
Clap it up, Peloton. Let's do this.
By getting everything from endurance rides to restorative yoga, all right at home. The Peloton Bike. Nothing like working out from home. Visit onepeloton.com to learn more.
No matter what music you love or when you love to listen, Odyssey's new exclusive stations, including Tailgate Crashers and Arena Rock, are expertly curated for sports listeners like you. Introducing hundreds of new exclusive music stations available now only on Odyssey.
All right, we're back here on Sports Talk Saturday on WGR Sports Radio 550. Brayton Wilson here, filling in for Nate Geary once again. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in on this very dreary, rainy Saturday here in Western New York. On our Western Hotline right now is Chris Daniels from King 5 News in Seattle. We're going to jump into the Seattle Kraken and how things have been going on with preparations for not only this crazy week that's going to be coming up, but also the upcoming inaugural season for the Kraken. And Chris joins us right now. Chris, good afternoon here in Western New York. Good morning to you in Seattle. Thanks again for taking the time to join us here.
Yeah, good morning. It sounds like you got some rain there. We just have the bluest skies you'll ever see here in Seattle, as the old Perry Como song goes, and it's going to be, I think, a pretty fabulous day here on the expansion draft day and the event that is to come here in Seattle.
Well, that's very nice for you guys, because we've got some pretty significant flooding here going on in Western New York. So it's a flip of things going on, because usually a lot of people say, Seattle, it always rains all the time, and here in Western New York, usually our summers as of late have been really dry, really hot, and droughts have been a normal thing for us. But I don't think we have to worry about that this year.
Yeah, no, this is maybe it is a flip. We like to tell everybody in Seattle that it rains all the time, but we're going now 32, 33 straight days without rain, and looks like we'll be at least 40. So we're going to be in record territory here, and I think that the people at the Kraken who have a expansion draft party on the water here scheduled on Wednesday are hoping that it's a Chamber of Commerce day with the sun shining down.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be a great scene for everybody involved to have a really nice day for Wednesday, a historic day for the Kraken franchise. I mean, what is the hype levels going around, not only just with the organization, but just throughout the city? I mean, we saw a little bit of it back with the Vegas Golden Knights when they came into the picture in 2017, but I mean, it seems like for the longest while, Seattle has kind of been waiting for this moment to have another professional team to join the ranks of the Seahawks and also the Mariners since the Supersonics left town years ago.
Yeah, I mean, this week is going to be significant, I think, for the casual sports fan. It'll make it seem real. This is really, I mean, for me, this is a story going back now 15 years in Seattle when Clay Bennett bought the Sonics, and immediately people started thinking that they're going to be moving out of town because this guy from Oklahoma City and the group from Oklahoma City didn't really seem like they wanted to keep the team in Seattle. And ever since, it's been a question of, will there ever be another winter sport in Seattle? Where will they play? And it really, with the NHL, started to take on a new life about 2011, 2012 with the arena project that had been put together, a brand new arena. It went through stops and starts. It ultimately failed in front of the city council. And then we see this group led by Tim Lewicki and later David Bonderman that said, hey, we can finance a brand new building in the Seattle Center area that is on the site of the old Key Arena where the Sonics used to play. And we can spend $1 billion doing it. And it was a privately financed deal at a public park. And that was enough to convince the NHL, hey, we're ready. We have the money. We have the finances to have an NHL team at Seattle Center. And, boy, it has been it has been a drama. It has been a story like really no other in Seattle, how we've seen all these twists and turns. But finally, this coming week, when the players start walking out on the stage in the Kraken jersey, in front of the fans, in front of what is going to be a sold-out event, I think is when it's going to start to become real for a lot of casual fans.
So, Chris, how is everything progressing in terms of the renovations that's being made to the old Key Arena? It's now Climate Pledge Arena, I believe it is. How's everything progressing that way? And everything's going to seem to be ready to go come the time that the puck drops on the opening season for them?
Yeah, I was just in it this past week on Monday. There was a tour for guys like me, and it really is not the same building that was there before. And I don't think anybody's going to ever try this kind of construction project in the future. But the roof of the old Key Arena was preserved, propped up, 44 million pound roof that dates back to the 1962 World's Fair on that spot. And once it was propped up, everything else was blown to smithereens, so to speak, underneath a complete tear down and rebuild of multiple levels, suites on ice suites. It really is a doubling of the size of the old Key Arena on that site from about 380,000 square feet to 800,000 square feet with a big glass facade and all sorts of paneling underneath for concerts. And there's certain seats with a certain type of paneling to make it louder for hockey. So they really have been billing it as a state-of-the-art top 5 arena in the world. And it looks like, even with all the issues with COVID and there was a short construction delay of a couple of days, that it will be done mid-October. And I think a lot of people here are questioning, does that mean it'll be ready for a home opener, meaning the season opener at home, or will they have to spend a few days on the road? And I think the Kraken right now are hedging on that, waiting for that schedule to come out. But there is a possibility that the Kraken will have to open on the road just to get the finishing touches put on that arena. But it does look like it's going to be done, by all indications, mid-October. And then they also have a practice facility, training center, in another part of town that's an $80 million project that's going to be done, the first rink, the main rink, the Kraken's rink for training on July 29th. So that, even with COVID, the groundbreaking was the day before the first known case in the country. And they were able to plug along and plug through and get that first rink done on July 29th, and the rest of that project scheduled to be open around Labor Day. So it really is amazing what the construction workers here have done in carrying out this vision and getting it all done in time for this new season.
Chris Daniels from King 5 News in Seattle joining us right now on the Wester Hotline as the Kraken get ready for the expansion draft coming up on Wednesday. teams around the league participating in the expansion draft have to have their protection list in by 5 o'clock today, and those lists will be revealed to the public and the rest of the NHL sometime tomorrow. Before we get into the expansion draft, Chris, I do want to ask you about the hiring of Dave Hextall as the head coach. How do you feel that kind of process played out, and overall the general thoughts of Hextall being named as the first head coach in Kraken history?
I mean, that was one of the big hires they had to make, obviously, before the draft. And Ron Francis, the general manager, had said all along he wanted to get it done before the second quarter of the year ended. So he did get that done by just a few days. And I would say that it was a surprise. It was a surprise not only to people around North America that follow hockey, but people here in Seattle. He was not a name that was mentioned a whole lot. And I think the one thing that shouldn't surprise is Ron Francis is very secretive about who he's looking at for staff, who he's looking at for his head coach. We've learned that already here in Seattle. He likes to keep a very tight ship around any information that may be out there. You're seeing it as we advance towards the expansion draft and the NHL draft as well. So I think the name was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise that Ron Francis kept it so close to the vest.
Yeah, and that's going to make things very interesting in terms of how Ron Francis is going to play out with his decisions for the upcoming expansion draft. And already we're hearing a bunch of interesting names that could be made available for Seattle ahead of Wednesday's expansion draft. I don't know if you've given any thought to it, but how do you think this kind of plays out? Who are some of the more interesting names that you've been seeing out there and potentially being left unprotected that Seattle might take the bait and add to their roster? Because it seems like that Ron Francis is willing to spend right up to the cap. The ownership has given them that luxury to spend up to the cap in order to build their team going forward.
Well, I'll tell you one name that I don't think is going to be part of the mix now, and there had been a lot of buzz, I think, not only in the Kraken organization, but here in Seattle for TJ Oshie from the Capitals. A local guy, was raised here in Western Washington for most of his youth before he went off to War Road, Minnesota, and so there was this thought that, this would be the guy you could build a franchise around, make your captain, make the face of the franchise. And then over the second quarter of the year, his father passed away. He had a great Stanley Cup finals run, playoff run. It was great late in the season there, and came out after the season and said, I want to stay in D.C. This is where I want to be. And since that happened, you've seen him dropped from every mock draft list. And you're not hearing his name with any sort of buzz now like we were prior to that. So that's one name I think that isn't going to be in consideration. I think Tyler Johnson, who grew up in Spokane, third, fourth liner in Tampa Bay, he's been talked about quite a bit. I think the situation in Carolina is worth watching with Hamilton, just based on Ron Francis's ties to Carolina. He spent a majority of the pandemic still living on the East Coast and is obviously greatly acquainted with that organization. So those are just a couple of the names. I think the goalies that have been bandied about that will be exposed, that might be your initial star of the franchise, face of the franchise, just based on the quality of the netminders that are being discussed right now. But it's going to be interesting tomorrow on Sunday, like you mentioned, with that list becoming public, that people will really start focusing on certain names and saying, boy, if he doesn't draft this guy, what's going on? I mean, I think we're gonna see some pretty big names exposed tomorrow.
Yeah, and one other team that's really interesting to kind of focus on is the Flyers, because Hextall coached the Flyers for quite a few years and got to know some of those notable players. And I think if I saw correctly that maybe a guy like Jacob Voracek would be left unprotected for the upcoming expansion draft. Do you think that there's maybe some sort of possibility that a name like Voracek could interest the Kraken, given his past history with Hextall, and maybe that he could become a leader going forward for that team? Because if I think I remember correctly, Voracek only has, I think, 2 years, maybe 3 left on his contract going forward. He's got 3 years left on his contract, and it's at an $8.25 million cap hit. But if you're looking to build a good core leadership group for that young expansion franchise that's in Seattle, maybe a guy like Voracek would be a nice addition.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people did immediately when Haxel was hired was look at the laundry list of players he coached in North Dakota, potentially
that too,
that he's tied to, that he would push to have on the initial franchise as well. Again, going back to TJ Oshie, I don't think that's going to happen. That was one of his players, but that he could have, he could lean on Ron Francis to say, hey, man, I coached this guy in college. He'd be a winner here in Seattle.
Chris Daniels joining us here on the Western Hotline from King 5 News in Seattle. Last thing I'll ask you, Chris, before I let you go, the NHL draft. That's coming up now this upcoming Friday with round 1 starting, and Seattle won the second pick overall in the expansion or in the draft lottery, right behind the Buffalo Sabres. And there's a lot of prevailing thought around the league and here in Buffalo too that Owen Power's likely going to go number 1. So let's hypothetically say that is the case. Power goes number 1. Who goes to Seattle at number 2?
I think that the Kraken would love Power to drop to the second slot, just based on Ron Francis's previous administration and building on defense. I think you're looking at a guy like Eklund and Beniers. I think are the most commonly mentioned going number 2. And hey, I've even seen the scenario somebody was trying to float that the number 2 could go to Buffalo, and there's a certain guy who isn't so happy in Buffalo that maybe that would be enough to mix up both organizations.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah, it seems unlikely at this point. A lot of things, at least in my book, would have to be taken into consideration with who Seattle manages to poke from teams or pull out of teams in the expansion draft. And if they get those right pieces, then sure, anything is possible. But I think in terms of that discussion, it would have to take a very quick process in order for something like that to be pulled off with Eichel possibly going to Seattle. But either way,
I wholeheartedly agree with you. But I do think it's funny. I think it was a headline here that Caesars Sportsbook says the Kraken have better odds to win the Stanley Cup than the Sabres.
Yeah.
And the Kraken don't even have any players.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that too. And, I think it's all generated primarily because of the success that Vegas had in their first year in the NHL, right, with how everything that they were able to do. And, not to say that Seattle doesn't have that chance of winning the Stanley Cup. It's just, I just think a lot of teams are a lot more wary of how they're going to operate in this expansion draft compared to the one with Vegas in 2017. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think Seattle will come away with a pretty decent squad. We'll see if they come away with a star, a foundation, star of the franchise. I think that's one of the things they're going to need just for casual observers, for people that are going to watch the game on TV, because we already know that there is a tremendous amount of interest in the game day atmosphere. They're going to be sold out. Every game's going to be sold out. There's a waiting list to get season tickets. It's going to be more about just building the brand, building the overall brand over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and getting casual fans involved who want to spend a Wednesday night watching a game. I think that's why they need somebody who's a marketable star out of the gate here in Seattle.
Very good. Well, Chris, I'm sure this will probably not be the first and only time we'll talk. This was a great conversation that we had, and I guess best of luck for the next week, the busy week that you're likely going to have, and enjoy the rest of the summer, and we'll talk down the road once the season gets started.
Sounds good. Good luck with the draft.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. Chris Daniels from King 5 News in Seattle joining us on the Western Hotline. Great conversation there. If you missed it, Corey will have that on demand at WGR550.com. The Seattle Kraken getting ready to build their team within the next few days. We'll finally get the chance to look at Seattle as the 32nd franchise and what is to come from that franchise over the course of the next few years. 803-0550, 1-888-550-2550 are the numbers to join us here if you want to get on the conversation. Coming up next at 1 o'clock, we'll speak with Joe Yerdon, hashtag the Noted Jerk on Twitter. We'll chat with him about the Sabres and maybe what's to come from the team going forward. And then at 1:30, we'll get some NHL draft talk, some last preparations for the NHL draft as round 1 gets underway on Friday. We'll talk with Tony Ferrari from DobberProspects.com. That's all still to come here on Sports Talk Saturday. Brayton Wilson filling in for Nate Geary this week on WGR.
WGR, Sports Radio 550. There's even a tailgate rock station for you sports crazy fans. Check out the new exclusive stations on the Odyssey app today.
All right, a few things to pass along before we hit another break, before we get Joe Yerdon on the show. Quick update from the Open Championship. Louis Oosthuizen holding a one-shot lead over Jordan Spieth currently right now. Oosthuizen is at 13 under par, while Spieth is at 12 under par, so still plenty of really good, riveting, exciting golf to come over the course probably of the next 24 to 36 hours. At least less than 36 hours. So Oosthuizen, again, 13 under par. Jordan Spieth, 12 under par. Right behind them, it is Dylan Fratelli from South Africa and Colin Morikawa, both tied at 9 under par. So the top two starting to pull away from the field a little bit here as we close in on the ending of round 3 at the Open Championship in England. Also, a couple of other notes. One weather note, there's some flooding, some substantial flooding going on right now in Niagara Falls Boulevard near Maple Road, right down the road here in Amherst. So if you're out and about, please be careful. Turn around, don't drown. That is the common phrase that is referred to when there is flooding on the road. Please don't risk it. Please don't risk it at all. Also, a notable signing in the NHL that had just come down the wire as Miro Heiskanen has re-signed with the Dallas Stars, an 8-year contract extension, so he gets a max term with Dallas for $67 million. So I think if my math is correct, that's something like $8.45 million, something like that. So Heiskanen getting paid quite a bit by the Dallas Stars to stay in Dallas for the long term. And the one thing that is notable about that is that it's going to drive the market up for a guy like Cale Makar in Colorado. Might make things a little more difficult for him to re-sign with the Avalanche going forward. Also might make things a little bit more difficult down the road for a guy like Rasmus Dahlin if he ever is going to get a long contract extension such as that.
Yeah, the Stars have about $5 million in cap space left, and they got 19 players under contract, it looks like, for next year. Yeah, a lot of the images also being shared between on social media for all the local creeks and rivers that cut through town. They're all going to be overflowing pretty soon. They're all pretty high.
Yeah.
The north towns are getting absolutely pasted. It's like I think the Pew had 3 inches by 10 o'clock this morning already in terms of rainfall.
Insane.
Yeah, we just do not get this level of rain.
Yeah.
So please, if you see a street that it looks like it's got water in it,
yes,
don't bother going through it. Turn that sucker
try.
right around.
Just turn around.
Not worth
find
it.
an alternate route. Please be careful out there. And for more coverage on this, you could be sure to go over to WBEN News Radio 930 to hear the local coverage that's going on. Also, be sure to check out their website, WBEN.com, for more. We've got one more hour left on the show. We're less than now 2 hours away from the transaction freeze in the NHL, and we'll speak a little bit more about that with Joe Yerdon coming up next. The hashtag Noted Jerk on Twitter also contributes with the Associated Press and Die by the Blade. Joe's coming up next here, and again, Tony Farrelly at 1:30 to talk about the NHL draft. Still plenty to come on Sports Talk Saturday. Brayton Wilson filling in for Nate Geary here on WGR.
WGR, Sports Radio 550.
How do you order food for the office these days? How do you make sure it's on time and as ordered? How can you get it individually packaged? How? EasyCater. When you order on EasyCater.com, the food comes as ordered and on time 98% of the time. And when there's a problem, which is practically never,
Thank you for calling EasyCater.
you can reach someone in about 9 seconds. How do you order 24/7 from more than 80,000 restaurants? How? EasyCater. Order 24/7 on EasyCater.com.
For the ones finding new ways to ensure the job always gets done. For the ones wearing many hats. For the ones who are hands-on, even from far away. And the ones keeping business moving forward. We are Grainger, offering supplies and solutions for every industry, with 24/7 support and experienced staff at over 250 local branches. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.